January 12th, 1995, Knoxville, Tennessee. 19-year-old Colleen Slemmer is under the impression she's walking to an abandoned area on the campus of the University of Tennessee to smoke a little pot with her fellow Job Corps students. But when they arrive, the plan wasn't to party, but to sacrifice Colleen to Satan. Or was it a brutal murder perpetrated and fueled by a jealous and mentally ill girl? And perhaps, just perhaps, Colleen was murdered just because her killer felt mean that day. This is the story of Christa Pike, the devil in the details. Hey y'all, I'm Chris Calvert.
And I'm her husband, Rob Potterworth. Welcome to Hitched to Homicide.
For better or worse.
Till death do us part.
Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, welcome. And for our friends over there in Lithuania.
Lithuania?
I feel like...
Lithuanians?
I always feel like Cindy Brady when I say Lithuania.
Because you have a lisp?
Let's see if I can get through this one. Sveka Atvika.
It sounds like something on the menu that I would want to order, but I didn't know how to say it to the waiter or the waitress.
I'd like that sushimi style. I can't even say that. It's been a rough morning.
Well, wherever the wheels are falling off early today.
Yeah, I know.
Wherever you're listening, be sure to hit that subscribe button, then like, rate, and review the podcast so other people who like true crime just like you can find us. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below.
Yep.
You can find us on Instagram at Hitch2Homicide or on X at H2H_podcast. And if you want true crime with us all the time, please join our closed Facebook group, The In-Laws and Outlaws. Just go to Facebook and type in H2H In-Laws and Outlaws. We pop up with a little bitty cross-stitched in-laws and outlaws.
Yes, we do.
Answer a couple questions. You're in. There's also a gun with some flowers coming out of it. Go join. Somebody's grandma did that. Just kidding.
Yeah.
I post photos and other information in there as well. It's a really great place. Lots of supportive people who love true crime and like to talk about all kinds of other stuff too.
Yes. And if my voice is a little hoarse or it sounds a little low today, I went to the Bengals game this past weekend and screamed my guts out. And so I'm still recovering.
And they won.
Yes. My boy Joey pulled it off. Greatest quarterback in the NFL.
And he's awfully cute, too, isn't he, girls? Although I'm glad the blonde is growing out. If you don't know, he kind of bleached his hair, but he's a cutie. Yeah. He's a cutie patootie.
He's a good boy.
We also now have a Buy Me a Coffee link if you want to send Rob some coffee.
Yes.
He drinks it every single episode.
I sure do.
You can find that link in our show notes. You can also send us a text. The link to that is at the top of the show notes. It says, send Chris and Rob a text. Mm-hmm. We do have a listener story today.
Yay.
But we'll get to that a little bit later in the podcast.
And if you'd like to send Scotty a biscuit, we don't have a link for that. Sorry.
Yeah, but you know what? We could buy him a biscuit out of the Buy Me a Coffee.
That's true.
Because we have bought me a Diet Mountain Dew out of the Buy Me a Coffee. I'm just drinking water today, so who knows what's going to happen. That's probably why it's going off the rails early.
Oh, well.
Well, this case is really interesting. We're sort of revisiting it. I'm going to keep you up to date on what's going on with Christa Pike.
Okay.
I want to start by saying that according to the late Dr. Jonathan Henry Pincus, he's the former chairman of neurology at Georgetown University School of Medicine, every killer he's ever examined, they share three things in common. They have brain damage, a history of abuse, and mental illness.
Those are pretty big ones.
Those are some biggies.
Yeah.
And Christa Pike, according to Dr. Pincus, had all three.
Wow.
Before we get started today, let me thank some sources. TennesseeCourts.gov, WBIR in Knoxville, Murderpedia, Wikipedia, the Malfactors Register, Newsweek, the Tennessean, that's hard to say, the Tennessean, mercyforchrista.org, USA Today, the Nashville Banner, and the Naples Daily News.
All right. Well, you ready?
I am.
Let's do it.
Christa Gale Pike was born on March 10th, 1976, to Carissa Hansen and Emil Glenn Pike in Beckley, West Virginia.
Email.
E-M-I-L. Emil?
Yeah.
Told ya, going off the rails early. Emil Glenn Pike. Beckley, West Virginia is beautiful. I don't know if you're listening from West Virginia. It's a gorgeous place, and in the fall, I bet it's absolutely beautiful right now.
I'm sure.
Her parents had this tumultuous relationship. They were married for 2 years, then they got divorced for a year after her mom got caught cheating on Emil, and then they remarried for another 2 years.
Okay.
After her mom tried to commit suicide.
Wow.
It's not a good home life situation.
You think?
Yeah.
Wow.
Little Christa had a horrific childhood starting from when she was conceived because her mom was an alcoholic who continued to drink while she was pregnant.
Oh, no.
And this caused brain damage.
Yeah.
It causes brain damage in utero, and Christa's frontal lobe, the region in the brain that controls executive functioning and behavioral regulation, is compromised. This is where the sense of right or wrong comes from.
Right.
So out of the gate, she's behind the 8 ball, so to speak.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And this brain damage, it carries consequences throughout Christa's life because as a baby, it caused her to suffer from seizures. And as an older child, Christa suffered from epilepsy. And in addition to the physical damage caused by her mom's drinking, her mother inflicted all this emotional abuse on her daughter. Carissa, her mom, was herself a seriously troubled woman. She suffered from depression. She attempted suicide when Christa was just 3 years old. She drank heavily throughout Christa's childhood, and she preoccupied herself with partying, her own appearance, and above all, her latest boyfriend. And that just left her kids with whatever was left over.
Yeah.
When she wasn't caring for little Christa, her mom just left her with relatives wherever was convenient because when Christa became inconvenient, she just dropped her kid off. And for the first 3 years of her little life, Carissa sent Christa away. And when she was 10 or 8 years old, after Carissa's 4th husband indicated that he didn't like children, he sent her away for good.
Wow.
Now, her dad wasn't much better. He would whip her as well when he wasn't ignoring her. And her maternal grandmother didn't want to look after her either because it took away from her, quote, alcohol time, end quote.
Oh, jeez.
This maternal grandma would physically and verbally abuse Christa right up until the time she died of alcoholic hepatitis.
Wow.
Her maternal grandfather worked in a slaughterhouse, and Christa would play there. This was like where she hung out and played. So she was subjected to like animals being slaughtered all the time. She was subjected to porn and slasher movies, and she's really young.
Wow.
But not only that, she was sexually abused. In kindergarten, her teacher reported that she was drawing penises, which is an indication of very early sexual abuse. And her mother was called into the school and was supposed to follow up on all of this after the school counselors were talking to her. And of course, she never did, because that was an inconvenience. By 9, Christa was growing pot in her room, and she and her mother would actually smoke weed together. Her mom thought that was a good way for them to bond.
Okay.
By the age of 14, Christa had a live-in boyfriend. Yeah. And her mom's 4th husband, the one who didn't want her around, would actually whip Christa and her sister with a belt, sometimes waking her up in the middle of the night to do it.
Wow.
And one night when he got his belt out and started beating her, she grabbed a butcher knife from the kitchen to defend herself.
Wow.
He physically abused her until he finally punched her in the nose, and Child Protective Services finally stepped in.
Wow.
When she's 10 or 11, a neighbor pushed her into a weed patch where he held her down and raped her while she screamed. And after reporting this crime the next day to a classmate and a teacher's aide, Christa identified the perpetrator from a lineup. And he's indicted, but he ultimately pleads no contest to a reduced offense. And her mom, Carissa, refused to believe that Christa had actually even been attacked.
Really?
When her mom didn't believe her, Christa attempted suicide.
Wow.
She's not even a teenager yet.
Yeah, it's so sad.
When she's 17, Christa was raped again by a stranger she encountered while walking down the street at night. She tried to run away, but the man dragged her off the street, causing her to hit her head on a rock before pulling her up a hill by her hair and by her shirt. He raped her, and he continued to hit her head against this rock while he's raping her and holding his hand over her mouth and cursing at her. But a car approaches, and he gets out of there. He runs away.
Okay.
The rape was actually confirmed at the hospital. I mean, they confirmed it with a rape kit. She was raped.
Right.
But there's several sources that say Christa is also a pathological liar. So just to recap, she doesn't have a brain that knows right from wrong, and on top of all of this, she is physically, mentally, and sexually abused.
Wow.
When she turns 18, her father told her that she couldn't live with him anymore. And her mom was in North Carolina and her dad was in West Virginia, and she's going back and forth between these two. But he had thrown her out of the house twice before because she was disobedient. She was lying to him, and he thought that she was being manipulative.
Okay.
She was also suspected of sexually abusing her dad's 2-year-old daughter because he had remarried.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And the only person who really cared for Christa was her paternal grandmother, her dad's mom. And Christa really loved her, and she believed that this grandma was the only one who really loved her. And when she died of cancer in 1988, Christa attempted suicide again. She's taking Tylenol. She's overdosing on Tylenol.
Wow.
But she's getting zero support from her parents.
Right.
There's another story that a man phoned her saying he was going to rape her. And after this, Christa and a friend found out who he was and beat him with a stick in a parking lot.
Oh, wow.
So is she a victim, or is she a perpetrator, or is she both?
She's both.
Christa suffered from bipolar disorder, and it went undiagnosed for most of her life. She was described as a car with the cruise control constantly set at 95 to 120 miles per hour.
Wow.
She dropped out of high school because she was lacking focus to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she's got an IQ of 111, it's not like she's incapable.
Right.
And on top of all of this, Christa is a tiny little thing. She's not even 5 feet tall, and she doesn't even weigh 100 pounds. And she also has this little bitty baby voice when she talks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, there are lots of people who grow up in the worst of circumstances, and they don't turn out to be cold-blooded killers. But I wanted to give you her childhood story.
Yeah, I mean, she hasn't had it easy from the get-go at all.
She hasn't.
Yeah.
When she's 17, she's sent to a juvenile facility for a year, and this is where she becomes interested in Job Corps. Now, Christa was shuffled back and forth between her mother in North Carolina and her dad in West Virginia, and she obtained her GED in 1993, and she had changed schools 12 times by the time she actually gets her GED.
Wow.
But she gets interested in something called Job Corps. It's fall of 1994. She's 18 years old, and she leaves for Job Corps at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Now, you might be wondering what Job Corps is.
Yeah.
It's a voluntary program administered by the United States Department of Labor that offers free of charge education and vocational training to young men and women ages 16 to 24. It's for low-income young people, and it serves about 60,000 kids each year. And you can complete your high school education and then train for a meaningful career while having access to room and board And you can actually train for up to 3 years in specific areas.
Okay. So it's different from like the Peace Corps and stuff like that.
It is. It's called Job Corps.
Okay.
And they offer tuition, free housing, meals, basic health care, a living allowance.
Does that still exist?
And career transition assistance. It does still exist. It does not exist at the University of Tennessee anymore, which is where she is going.
Gotcha. Okay.
So when she gets to Knoxville, Christa gets there. She meets a boy who is a year younger than she is. His name is Tadaryl Shipp. He's 17 years old.
Okay.
Now, Christa is suddenly more interested in Tadaryl than in training for a future job. I actually read that she wanted to be a nurse, and that was what her mother was, which totally surprised me.
Yeah.
Because her mom does not have her act together at all.
Yeah, she's not a very caring nurse.
Yeah. But she's really interested in Tadaryl mostly because of his religious beliefs. Okay. Because Tadaryl is a Satanist. And Christa feels like Tadaryl is the first man in her life that wanted to love and protect her. And she felt like maybe he was really respected and maybe even feared among their peers, the other people who were there at Job Corps.
I can't imagine, anyone being a Satanist being feared.
Yeah.
Oh, gee whiz.
But I also read that they became interested in the occult and devil worship together. So take your pick.
Yeah.
Christa and Tadaryl try to do some recruiting of other people, so they start worshiping with them.
Really?
And Tadaryl even has a satanic Bible and a satanic altar in his dorm room.
Man.
Now, I've seen some strange things in dorm rooms before.
Yeah.
I can think of maybe some pot growing in a dorm room, maybe like a still, somebody making their own alcohol, their own moonshine. I did go to the University of Kentucky. What can I tell you?
I had a Mr. Coffee and a Fender Rhodes piano.
I had a mini fridge.
And a mini fridge. Yeah, I did.
But can you imagine being this guy's roommate and he has a satanic altar in the room?
Wow.
How do you sleep at night?
I guess everybody's got to have a hobby.
Yeah, don't mind me. I'm just going to do a little satanic ritual over here.
Yeah, if I start levitating, don't pay any attention to me. Jeez.
Tadaryl did, in fact, just a few days prior to January 12th, 1995, tell another student, his name was Kip O'Hara, that he had to make a human sacrifice because the celestial bodies were in alignment.
I'm thinking Tadaryl needs a little bit of therapy.
And while Tadaryl is telling Kip this story, while he's saying, "Yeah, I got to find a sacrifice," he apparently has a Ouija board with him. Like, I don't know if it's like tucked under his arm. He's like carrying it around with him, but he's got a Ouija board with him, according to Kip.
Okay.
Now, Christa has another friend, someone she and Tadaryl have recruited into their satanic cult, and her name is Shadola Peterson. And Shadola is considered a quiet girl, and I guess you could probably say she was more of a follower than a leader or an instigator.
Okay.
Now, also at Job Corps is a 19-year-old girl named Colleen Slemmer. Colleen is from Orange Park, Florida, and she's come to the University of Tennessee to get computer training. And according to her mother, Colleen loved helping children, and in particular, she loved helping disabled children. And she had helped and looked out for these children from the age of 8 on.
Okay.
Like that was really her passion.
Yeah.
Now, there's not a whole lot out there about Colleen's early life other than her mother's name is May Martinez, and she's from Florida.
Okay.
In January of 1995, Christa gets her panties in a wad over Colleen. It's important to note that no one, and I mean no one other than Christa, believed what Christa believed, which was that Colleen was interested romantically in Tadaryl. Can you imagine? Yeah, I'm interested in your satanic worshiping boyfriend.
Wow.
No.
Yeah.
Colleen was never interested in Tadaryl, but Christa was convinced she was, and Christa told people that she hated Colleen. She was ugly to her, and at one point she even went into Colleen's dorm room and stood over her while she slept.
Oh.
And apparently Colleen caught her doing this, and her spidey senses go up. I mean, like, she called her mom and said, I want to come home. This girl is weird and I don't like it. I wake up and she's been watching me sleep.
Yeah, that's creepy.
When my children were little, they would come stand by the side of the bed and not say anything. And then I would like wake up. I'm a light sleeper anyway. I would wake up and the first thing I would do would be like, and Rob even knows.
You've done that to me a couple times.
You have to rouse me carefully.
Yeah. I usually drop a plate and break it in the kitchen before I come into the bedroom.
Yeah, Chris, honey. Otherwise, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Marco.
It's bad. But I feel for Colleen because Christa's just standing over her, watching her sleep. Okay. Now, Colleen's mom told her, you got to stay put because you signed this contract for 2 years with Job Corps. And if you leave, you lose your spot. Yeah. And these spots are very coveted. I mean, you had to meet a lot of requirements to get into this program.
Right.
On Wednesday, January 11th, 1995, Christa tells fellow student Kim Rhodes that she's planning on killing another student. She says she's planning on killing Colleen Slemmer. And when Kim asks her why or what's wrong with you, why would you say something like that? Yeah. Christa says, quote, I just feel mean today, end quote.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm just feeling mean today. Honey, that's what I'm going to tell you from now on when I'm having a bad day. Rob, I'm feeling mean today.
Honey, I'm going to Target.
Oh, Target. That's the cure for everything. But Christa tells Kim that she's looking for Shadola because she wanted to get a box cutter from her. Like she's making plans.
Right.
Now, I don't know if Colleen was even close to Christa, but one thing that we know for sure is that Christa believed that Colleen was interested in Tadaryl because on January 12, 1995, another student named Daniel Wayland ran into Christa and Shadola somewhere off the Job Corps campus area, and Christa wanted to know if Daniel had seen Colleen, saying, quote, when we find her, she's dead, end quote.
Jeez.
Thursday, January 12th, Christa invites Colleen to go for a walk with her, Tadaryl, and Shadola. She tells Colleen they're going to this nearby abandoned woods to an abandoned steam plant on the University of Tennessee's campus. Mm-hmm. They're going there because they're going to smoke some weed, and then they're going to a video store to rent a movie.
A video store.
A video store.
I was going through some old stuff here a little while back, and I found my Blockbuster card. I think it was from 1942 or something.
That and a quarter will get you a bag of chips.
There you go.
Now, all four of them sign out of the dorm that night. Christa tells Colleen that she was ready to make peace. She was ready to put it all behind them. Mm-hmm. But Christa has no intention of smoking the peace pipe with Colleen. She's got other ideas, and she's prepared. Now, Christa is later going to say that she had every intention of hurting Colleen when they left the dorm that night. They walk into these woods, and when they get to the most secluded area in an abandoned steam plant, it's like a horror movie.
It reminds me of that commercial when I think it's a Geico commercial or something, and the kids are running around and they're being chased, and they go, let's get in the car and run. And he goes, don't be stupid. Let's go over here in this building with all these saws.
Yeah, let's get in the running car. No, why would we do that? Let's go into the room with all the chainsaws.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're in this abandoned steam plant. And when they get there, Colleen gets suspicious. And she asks Christa, are we really planning on smoking some weed? I mean, is that what we're really doing here? Mm-hmm. And it's at this point that Christa Pike turns on Colleen Slemmer. She starts yelling at her, and she proceeds to punch her in the face.
Wow.
Colleen fights back. Then Colleen tries to reason with Christa. She says, wait, let's talk about this like civilized people. Because remember, Christa thinks Colleen is interested in Tadaryl, and Colleen has zero interest in Tadaryl.
Right.
So Colleen wants to talk it out. Now, later, Christa would say that she and Colleen had been having problems for some time and that Colleen had threatened her with a box cutter. Don't know if I believe that.
Yeah.
But Christa says that when it all begins, she only has designs to fight Colleen. She wants to beat her up for, quote, running her mouth, end quote. So Shadola starts throwing some hands too. Remember?
Yeah.
She's the sort of meek and mild one that's a follower.
Right.
But as the fighting escalates, Colleen starts grabbing at Tadaryl, so he pushed and slapped her. Then Christa makes Colleen take off her shirt, and she uses this miniature meat cleaver to cut Colleen.
Ooh.
Now, Shadola had a box cutter, and she too started stabbing Colleen. And Christa then takes the box cutter out of her pocket and slashes Colleen's stomach, her breasts, and her hands. Colleen tries to run away, and that makes Christa even angrier.
Wow.
She and Tadaryl track her down, drag her to the ground, and start kicking the living daylights out of Colleen.
Holy cow.
Christa switches from this box cutter back to this little meat cleaver. Later, Christa would say that she was taking things out on Colleen that happened to her years ago.
Man.
But in her taped confession, she said, quote, I knew what I was doing, end quote. Christa then gives the box cutter to Tadaryl, and being the Satanist he is,
Right.
What do you think he does?
He goes to town on her.
He cuts a pentagram into her chest
really?
with the box cutter.
Wow.
There's another report that stated they cut a pentagram into her forehead as well. Now, at this point, Colleen is beaten and bloody. She's carved up. She's begging for her life. She promises them, if you let me go, I won't tell anyone. I won't tell anybody what happened. She even says, quote, I'll walk back to Florida without returning to Job Corps to get my stuff, end quote.
Wow.
And Christa tells her to shut up because, quote, it's harder to hurt somebody when they're talking to you, end quote.
That's cold.
But they keep beating her, knocking her down and slashing her with this box cutter and this little meat cleaver. But Christa finally slashes Colleen's throat. But Colleen is still alive. And finally, after 45 minutes of torture, Christa says, quote, the bitch won't die, end quote.
Jeez.
She takes a big piece of asphalt from the ground and hits Colleen in the head with it 5 times, saying, quote, I want to see her brains flow, end quote.
Grief. Wow.
And Christa Pike gets her wish because Colleen Slemmer is now dead.
Man.
They hide the body in the bushes and head back to campus. Now, before they walk away, Christa picks up a piece of Colleen's skull. She has it in the pocket of her blood-spattered jeans as a souvenir.
Good Lord.
The 3 of them check back in at the front desk at the dorm like nothing else has happened. Around 11 p.m. that night, Christa goes into her friend Kim's dorm room and confesses that she just killed Colleen, and to prove it, she shows Kim the piece of skull.
Really?
Then in grisly detail, she explains to Kim how they made Colleen strip from the waist up to carve the pentagram into her body and how they beat her, slashed her throat, and then smashed her head with a chunk of asphalt.
Oh, my gosh.
Kim is later going to testify that while Christa is explaining all of this to her, she's dancing around in a circle. She's singing and smiling.
Wow.
Now, the next day, Christa tells another student, showing off her little trophy and pointing to her tennis shoes, saying, quote, that ain't mud on my shoes. That's blood, end quote.
Oh, my gosh.
So she's killed this girl, and she's bragging to everybody.
Why doesn't she just go down to the police department? I mean,
why doesn't she?
Yeah.
And you would think that these kids would report what they heard.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
They're probably afraid.
I don't know if they thought she was just lying or what I say all the time, I'm talking out of my ass. I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know if I'm saying the right thing or not. But
yeah, and what she's saying is so far-fetched. I mean, not far-fetched, but just so over the top. Why would you believe that? You know what I mean?
It is far-fetched. It is over the top. I mean, I wouldn't believe it. I would be like, that girl's crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
On Friday, January 13th, the Knoxville Police and the University of Tennessee Police are summoned to the greenhouses near the Ag campus. An employee has found the remains of Colleen Slemmer. She's nude from the waist up, just as Christa had described her to her friend Kim. Her head had been bludgeoned and her throat slashed. She was so badly beaten and cut up that the first officer on the scene testified that he didn't know if he was looking at the victim's face or not.
Jeez.
It was so mutilated. And the medical examiner later said that when assigning letters to each wound, they made it all the way through the alphabet and finally had to go to AA and BB.
Oh, man. That poor girl.
There were literally too many wounds to count. And the medical examiner also said that the wounds were red, which meant that her heart was still beating as they tortured her. She endured all of it, all the way until the end.
For 45 minutes.
Now, on January 13th, while they're recovering Colleen's body, Christa leaves behind her jacket in a counselor's office. This is Friday, remember? It sits in this guy's office over the weekend, and when he gets back, he's heard that Christa is a suspect in the murder of Colleen, because when they find Colleen's body, the students start coming forward and saying, look, Christa's been, she's been bragging.
Sure.
So the counselor comes back to his office, he hears all this, and he turns over the jacket to the police. And guess what Christa has left in the pocket of that jacket?
I don't know.
Her trophy, that piece of skull.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Wow.
Within 36 hours of the murder, they have Christa Pike, Tadaryl Shipp, and Shadola Peterson in custody.
Yeah.
Police find blood on Christa's clothes. Her jeans in particular are covered in blood. Christa proudly gives a full confession to the police on tape. She's super excited to talk about everything she did to Colleen. She's proud of it. And one of the arresting officers would later say that she looked like a little kid, but inside she was the devil.
Yeah.
So remember, she's not 5 feet tall. She's not even 5 feet tall. She doesn't weigh 100 pounds, and she has a little baby voice.
Jeez.
And so he's saying she looks like a kid, but she's the devil incarnate.
Yeah. Yeah, to say the least.
Now, Christa is the first to be arrested and the first to be questioned. She thinks that if she tells police everything that happened, that Tadaryl and Shadola will be off the hook. Not so fast, Christa. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Now, apparently, Shadola watches more than anything. And she cooperates with the police. She tells them everything about that night. And she is actually given 6 years probation.
Okay.
They just let her off the hook.
Right.
But I did read in testimony for Tadaryl's trial that Shadola was wielding this box cutter and she was stabbing her.
Well, as you were telling the story before, I thought, well, wait a minute. Didn't she have a box cutter and she joined the party?
She did.
Yeah.
But she sings like a canary and they give her 6 years probation.
Okay.
March 22nd, 1996, Christa Pike goes on trial for the murder and conspiracy to commit the murder of Colleen Slemmer. The district attorney who is prosecuting the case is running for office, and he wants everybody to see him prosecute this devil baby named Christa Pike. And Christa doesn't disappoint. During the trial, she laughs, she jokes, she looks back at her mother. She sends notes to her mom and to her attorney, all in front of Colleen's family. The only time Christa cries is when they play her very damning confession in the courtroom.
Crocodile tears.
It took 12 men and women less than 3 hours to render this verdict. It is guilty of first-degree murder.
Right.
When the penalty phase begins, everyone knows this DA is going for the death penalty.
Yep.
Now, you should know it's super rare for a woman to get the death penalty, let alone a 19-year-old girl.
But she is an adult now.
She is. And you should also know that no one has been put to death in Tennessee since 1837.
Wow.
When Christa Pike is facing this death penalty.
So they're a little bit overdue.
They're overdue. The jury comes back in less than a day, death by execution.
Wow.
Now, Christa cries out to her mother as she's dragged from the courtroom. It's quite a scene because her mom, who took the stand and said this was all her fault because she was a bad mother, is yelling at the jurors, calling them murderers
Wow.
as they drag her murdering child out of the courtroom.
Wah.
And her mom is a little too late, right?
Yeah.
A few hours later, jail guards intercept a letter that Christa is trying to get out to Tadaryl. Quote, "You see what I get for trying to be nice to that hoe?
Yeah.
I went ahead and bashed her brains out so she'd die quickly instead of letting her bleed to death and suffer more, and they fry me," end quote.
What a sweetheart.
Christa signs the letter to Tadaryl, Little Devil. By the way, that was his nickname for her, Little Devil.
Jeez.
Tadaryl is convicted of murder 1 and is serving life in prison. He becomes eligible for parole in 2026.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
And you might think this is the end of this story, but it's not.
Uh-oh.
Christa's legal appeals keep her from a lethal injection through the year 2000. Then in 2001, Christa has a run-in with another murderess, Patricia Jones. Patricia is serving life for killing an 84-year-old woman. Now, according to Christa, Patricia had tortured her for years, calling her, quote, fried chicken, end quote, and saying, quote, "You're gonna fry," end quote.
Oh, wow.
Referencing her death sentence.
Right.
Although I did look it up, and I do believe that lethal injection is the way Tennessee would put someone to death.
Right.
But one day in the prison, a fire breaks out in this wing where Patricia and Christa's friend Natasha Cornett are living, and they are put in a holding cage while they deal with this fire. And while these three are together, Patricia threatens Christa's friend, Natasha Cornett. Coincidentally, Natasha is a Satanist who is serving 3 life sentences for kidnapping and murder of a whole family. So Patricia gets into a tiff with Natasha, and Christa jumps on her back and begins to choke her with a shoestring. Patricia is unconscious when they finally pull Christa off of her, and Christa later says, quote, "I don't want to say that I intended to kill her, but I would say that I didn't care if she died. I wouldn't lose any sleep over it if she did," end quote.
Wow. Nice person.
Phone records where she recounts this incident to her mom revealed that she said, quote, "I wrapped that shoestring around her and tried to choke the damn life out of her. She was passed out and on the ground, mama, twitching, foaming at the mouth, and her eyeballs were bugged out so far her eyelids were flopped up," end quote.
Gee whiz.
For this crime, Christa Pike was given another 25 years on top of her death sentence. And it's at this point Christa is ready to give it all up. She asks to end her legal appeals. She wants to be executed. Now, her attorneys don't think she knows what she's doing, and they beg her to think it through. She doesn't, and in June of 2002, Judge Mary Beth Leibowitz lets Christa drop her appeal. And Christa's execution date is set for August 19th, 2002. Christa thanks the judge. She weeps tears of joy, saying, quote, "Death is better than prison," end quote. Then she changes her mind. Christa's attorneys file a motion just in time, and the Court of Appeals stays her execution with only 3 weeks to go. And for the next 3 years, motions and appeals go back and forth. And in October of 2005, Christa's death sentence is affirmed by the court.
Okay.
Then in March of 2012, Christa makes friends with guard Justin Heflin and his friend, personal trainer Donald Kohut. It's not exactly known how this plan was hatched, but Christa is planning on charming this guard into helping her get out of the Tennessee prison for women. And Kohut, who worked as a personal trainer and was in his early 30s, had entered into a letter-writing relationship with Christa around the beginning of 2011.
Who is this idiot? Jeez.
Now, by July of that year, Donald was driving 1,700 miles round trip from Flemington, New Jersey to Nashville, Tennessee to visit Christa in person on visiting days once or twice a month.
Oh, God.
And eventually, Donald told her that he had a plan to spring her, and he had enlisted the help of corrections officer Justin Heflin, who agreed to participate in return for cash and gifts. Don't know what kind of gifts they were. Don't know what she was doing for him in prison.
I don't think I want to know.
Now, because of security concerns, the Tennessee Department of Corrections has never provided the details about this plan. However, the eventually unsealed indictment laid out a scenario where a prison key would be traced and then a duplicate created. Then early in 2012, prison personnel received information about this escape plot. I don't know who ratted out Justin, but they did.
Okay.
The attempted prison break was thwarted by a joint investigation involving the Tennessee Department of Corrections and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and the New Jersey State Police.
Wow.
And according to the TBI, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, the plan was not very far along when it was uncovered, and, quote, the jailbreak was not imminent, end quote.
Okay.
In other words, these three weren't, as you say, my sweet husband, Mensa candidates trying to plan a jailbreak.
The gang that couldn't shoot straight. Yeah.
In March of 2012, Donald Kohut, the boyfriend, the trainer, was arrested and charged with bribery and conspiracy to commit escape, while Justin Heflin, the guard, was arrested and charged with bribery, official misconduct, and conspiracy to commit escape.
Wow.
Christa was never charged, and it was unclear if she was actually a participant in the conspiracy other than being aware of it.
Right.
But Donald Kohut was sentenced to 7 years in prison for this, and Justin Heflin, the guard, because he cooperated with authorities after his arrest, served 0 prison time.
Really?
But he definitely lost his job at the prison.
Yeah, he won't be doing that occupation anymore.
No, he won't. August 27th, 2020. Tennessee Attorney General Herbert Slattery requested the Tennessee Supreme Court to set an execution date for Christa Pike. But because of COVID, it all gets pushed back. And prior to November of 2022, Christa had completely exhausted all of her appeals. But in that month, the state Supreme Court found that the state's law for juveniles automatically sentenced to life in prison without a chance at parole was unconstitutional. Now, we've talked about this a little bit because California has really gone back and said, if you were 18 or 17 or 16 and tried as an adult, that there's a chance you're going to be out on parole.
Right.
And in August of 2023, Christa's attorney used this ruling to reopen her bid to have her 1996 conviction and sentence thrown out, stating her young age and her damaged mental health at the time of the murder, and that should spare her from facing execution.
So was she 18 when she committed the murder?
She was.
Ah, okay.
She was.
Okay.
But in October of 2023, Knox County Criminal Court Judge Scott Green denied Christa's request, saying the November 2022 Supreme Court ruling did not apply to her. And I think it was because she wasn't 16 or 17 and tried as an adult. She was 18 and tried as an adult.
Okay.
She's the only woman sentenced to death in the state of Tennessee, and she has spent 28 years in prison and on death row, which is pretty much solitary confinement at the Deborah K. Johnson Rehabilitation Center, northwest of downtown Nashville.
All right.
But just 6 weeks ago, in September of 2024, Christa's attorney finalized a settlement with the state that will bring an end to her isolation. The agreement will grant her the behavior-dependent opportunities afforded to the men on Tennessee's death row, giving her more time out of her cell and allowing her to work a job and share meals with other incarcerated women. So before, the men on death row in Tennessee were able to do all these things.
Right.
She's the only female on death row in Tennessee, and they weren't letting her do any of that stuff.
Gotcha.
Now, according to one of her attorneys, Angela Bergman, quote, "This settlement will be life-changing for Christa Pike. For the last nearly 30 years, Ms. Pike has been subjected to solitary confinement in a cell the size of a parking space where she has had nearly no meaningful human contact. These conditions have had a devastating impact on her mental and physical health. For Christa, this not only means a reprieve from decades of harmful and unconstitutional conditions, but an opportunity to have a meaningful, positive impact on those around her," end quote.
Okay, whatever.
Under the terms of an agreement filed in court, Pike will be able to earn more privileges and freedom of movement and interaction with other people after set periods of time without disciplinary infractions. So if she doesn't try to choke anybody else out with a shoestring and then brag about it to her mom, she'll be able to have these freedoms.
Man.
Now, Christa's attorneys have argued that the crime for which she was sentenced to death should be seen in the context of her youth at the time and a, quote, horrific childhood, end quote, that started with her mother drinking heavily while she's pregnant.
Okay.
But after her trial, Christa became the youngest woman sentenced to death in the modern era of the death penalty, period.
Really?
If she'd been a year younger when the murder was committed, like Tadaryl Shipp, who was 17, she would not have been eligible for this death penalty. But today, she is one of only 52 women on death row in the United States, and if executed, would be the first woman killed by the state of Tennessee in more than 200 years.
Wow.
Now, back in 2021, Colleen's mom, Mae Martinez, went on record with Newsweek magazine saying she wanted Christa Pike to be executed. And here's why. The piece of Colleen's skull that Christa pocketed is evidence, and she cannot get it back until Christa is put to death.
Really?
Right. Quote, "Honestly, my heart breaks every single day because I keep reliving and reliving it. I want this to happen before I die. Otherwise, nobody will see justice," end quote.
Man, that's heartbreaking.
As of today, Christa is still sitting on death row, but she has no date of execution. And that's the story of Christa Pike, the little devil, sitting on death row, just waiting. And that's all I have to say about that. For nearly 7 years, Jane Doe has lived in the shadows, her past buried deep beneath layers of secrecy and silence. After completing more than was asked of her in her last assignment for the enigmatic Kaiwolf project, Jane Doe vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of dead bodies and unanswered questions. But now, as the specter of her past returns with a vengeance, Jane finds herself thrust back into a world she thought she'd left behind forever. When her former sins come knocking on her door, Jane is faced with an impossible choice: continue to hide in the shadows, or once again take up arms against the forces that threaten to tear apart the fabric of society. With enemies lurking around every corner and allies who may not be what they seem, Jane must rely on her wits, training, and her unyielding determination to survive. And while trust is a luxury she cannot afford, Jane must confront the truth about herself and her past. As the clock ticks, she realizes that the line between family, friend, and foe are razor thin, and in the end, the only person she can rely on is herself. Jane Doe 4 Charlotte is available September 24th, 2024. No name, no regrets, no mercy.
It's just hard to believe that someone can be just that evil.
That evil.
That's just
That evil.
I can't even comprehend.
It's like cultivated evil. It was like, she had this brain damage, which I'm sure she did.
Right.
And then she was treated horribly.
Yeah.
And it was just a perfect storm. And it almost feels like the evil was cultivated. And then she gets to Job Corps after she gets her GED. And who does she like shack up with and get involved with?
Yeah.
Yeah. A Satanist.
Satanist.
Yeah. Cultivated evil.
Yeah, it's like it was a perfect storm, is what it was.
It really was.
Yeah.
It really was. And I feel for Colleen's mom, and I understand how Colleen's mom is saying, she wants her to be executed in her lifetime because otherwise, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And poor Colleen.
Yeah.
I mean, who's there for Colleen? We've got all these attorneys for Christa.
Right.
But who's the voice for Colleen other than her mom?
And she didn't do anything.
And she didn't do anything.
Yeah.
She didn't even want her boyfriend.
Yeah.
She wasn't even interested in him.
This was all in Christa's mind.
Yeah. And he's eligible for parole in 2 years.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Yeah. Well, I know earlier you said that you had...
I have a listener story.
Yeah.
I do.
All right. Well, let's hear that, shall we? Maybe that'll raise our spirits a little bit.
This story comes from one of our in-laws and outlaws, Dana Mills.
Yeah. Okay.
I was working as a small Kansas County Sheriff's Office dispatcher.
Okay.
That's a mouthful.
Say that 10 times fast.
We were releasing a teenager to his father's custody. So into his father's custody.
Right.
I don't recall why the teen was arrested, but the teen and his father were walking to their vehicle, escorted by a deputy, apparently knowing that the punishment awaiting him at home, meaning the teen, was gonna be worse than what he had at the jailhouse. He tried to make a break for it by sprinting down the street. And I guess he had no idea of the deputy's past football experience as the deputy ran and tackled the teen full bore.
Nice.
That's in all caps. He returned him promptly back to jail. I saw the whole thing via the security cameras posted around the sheriff's office. It was quite amusing to see in black and white with no sound.
That's awesome.
And honestly, that gives the phrase, just wait until we get home.
Yeah, exactly.
A whole new meaning.
Yeah. I remember I got in trouble one time, sent to the principal's office. This was in the days when you still got a spanking.
Yeah.
And I got that. And listen, knowing what I had waiting for me at home was a lot worse than that spanking with that board with the holes in it.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So thank you for that story, Dana Mills.
Yeah, thanks, Dana.
Yeah.
That was good.
Send one in if you got one.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be scary. It can be good like this. It can be good like this one too. So thank you, Dana.
Well, I got 3 more that aren't like that. They're just stupid criminals with a little bless your heart. All right, number 1, I'm calling Marco Polo.
Okay.
A convicted felon in 3 different Florida counties eluded law enforcement for most of November, but authorities tracked her down this week hiding in her own home.
Okay.
All right. Authorities reported that Citrus County Sheriff's Office had been searching for 39-year-old Stacy Usher, who, according to its Facebook post, quote, has a history of fraud, grand theft, and obtaining property by worthless checks.
Okay.
Yeah. The post also noted that Usher is registered as a convicted felon in Citrus, Manatee, and Pasco counties.
I love that there's a Citrus County.
Yeah, exactly. And that she was wanted currently for a parole violation.
Oh, okay.
For the sale of fentanyl and unlawful use of a two-way communication device.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What's that, a phone? A two-way communication device?
No
a phone?
idea, but the list just goes on and on and on. It's not clear what the alleged parole violation entailed, but what is clear is that hide and seek may not have been Usher's forte.
Okay.
All right, deputies searching for her residence found her hiding inside her couch.
Inside the couch?
In the couch.
How do you hide in the couch? I've found loose change in a couch before, but not a whole person.
Well, I saw a picture of it, and they shot the picture as they were getting, she was underneath the cushions.
Yeah, still, that's where the loose change hangs out, not the whole person.
Well, needless to say, she's back now in custody.
She's no longer in Citrus County.
No.
Unlawfully using two-way communication devices.
Exactly. All right, number 2, I'm calling sink or swim.
Okay.
An alleged thief in Alabama tried to evade police by hopping in a river kayak. Numerous people had called the police to report the man who was allegedly seen wandering through backyards and stealing a lawnmower and a leaf blower. Okay. Some residents had confronted the man by early afternoon, prompting him to flee to the Coosa River, according to Police Chief Tyler Rowe.
Okay.
All right. Officers arrived soon after and tracked the suspect down the river. Quote, they'd have eyes on him, then they'd lose him, then catch sight of him again, Rose said. They didn't have to watch, long. He didn't get far before the kayak flipped and he started swimming towards the bank where officers were waiting on him.
Oops.
The suspect was immediately tackled and charged with burglary, theft of property, attempted to elude, and resisting arrest. Wait. His reasoning for all of this is classic.
Okay.
He was stealing the items to sell so he could get his girlfriend's vehicle out of impound.
Okay. Good Lord.
There you go. You got to have a good reason to commit a crime.
But he didn't have the leaf blower and the lawnmower with him in the kayak, did he?
No.
He was just kayaking down the...
When the people confronted him, that's when he took off and ran.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And here's my other question. They would see him and then they wouldn't see him. Are they behind him in a kayak? Get a motorboat, guys.
Well, I think there's more to the story. They said that they did have a boat ready in case he went down. But,
okay.
I guess he was like, the waves or whatever in the river. They would see him, then they wouldn't see him.
Okay. Yeah. And then he ended up flipping it anyway.
You got it.
Okay. I was getting a visual on the whole thing.
All right. Okay. And finally, number 3.
Number 3.
Bad maintenance can be high maintenance.
Bat or bad?
All right. And finally, number 3.
Number 3.
Bad maintenance can be high maintenance. All right.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
There were other people who were thinking you said bat maintenance. I loved that.
All right. Okay. 2 apparent would-be thieves probably thought they had the perfect plan. One would run into their local Kohl's, grab a bunch of merchandise, and run back out to the parking lot where the second guy would be waiting with a getaway car.
Okay.
Yeah, it sounds pretty simple.
Does sound simple.
What the suspects likely didn't count on was their getaway car's battery dying.
That's a problem.
Clackamas County deputies say that they responded to a call about an alleged theft at the Clackamas Promenade Shopping Center. And when they got there, they say they found the hood of said car up and Raymond Stavick and Derek Schertz trying to get a jump from bystanders.
We just robbed this place. We need a jump.
Yeah. Found inside the car, among other items per authorities, were phones, laptops, clothing from other stores, stolen credit cards, and a credit card reader.
They've been busy.
Yeah. Oh, and there were drugs and counterfeit cash.
There you go.
Oh, I forgot. Oh, and also the getaway car was stolen.
Let's just round it out. That's good. Just full circle, round that one out.
Go big or go home.
Exactly.
They were immediately arrested, and you know the rest of the story.
What's the name of the town?
Well, I think it's pronounced Clackamas. It's Clackamas. Clackamas.
The Clackamas Coals.
Yes, Clackamas Coals.
A little bit of alliteration right there at the end.
Perfect.
Well, if you have a bless your heart, or you like shopping at Kohl's like I do,
or Clackamas,
and they're going to email us from wherever this town is to tell us we got it wrong.
Exactly.
All you have to do is go to hitchedtohomicide.com, and when you get there, there's a pull-down menu. While you're there, you can also suggest a case, or you can tell us about your brush with true crime. That's my amazing husband out there.
And that's my beautiful bride in the booth.
Join us next time on Hitched to Homicide.
Bye, y'all.